Welcome to this web lecture about the creation of menus. In a different web lecture, we studied the use of menus. Now we will concentrate on the content and the layout of menus. Regarding creating menus, we always want to create the menus in a task-related way. So items belonging together, we can group them into a tree organization leading to a tree-structured menu. We create groups of logically similar items that we put together on the same menu, perhaps visually separated from the rest. The groups should cover all the possibilities to not leave the user wonder where the item that he's missing should be located. We also have to make sure that items are non-overlapping so that there is no confusion which choice to make when two choices seem to mean about the same thing. In Windows, it always continues to surprise me that there is preferences, options, and customize. Three things that clearly have overlapping meaning. Use familiar technology, but make sure that you choose the words so that the meaning is always very distinct between the items. We have to present items in a certain sequence on a menu. This sequence has to be natural whenever possible. Natural can, for instance, be according to time. When we see our email messages from which we can select one to view, they will be ordered typically chronologically. We can use a numeric ordering. When we present multiple choice tests in courses, we typically shuffle the choices that students are presented with, but when the choices to be made are 1, 2, 3, or 4, we will keep them in that order because that is logic. Order can also be based on physical properties, presenting items from small to large. Order can simply be a convention. There is no specific reason for having an edit menu with cut, copy, paste in that order, but everyone does it, so we stick to this order that is commonly agreed upon. The sequence can also have cases where there is no task-related ordering. Then we can use alphabetical ordering of sequence items. Don't forget that cut, copy, paste is not an alphabetical ordering. We can also put most frequently used items first, or we can put the most important items first because those are the items the user is most likely to start looking at. Here is a nice example. This is the font selection menu from Microsoft Office. And the menu is adaptive and consists of 3 separated parts. At the top, we see fonts that were recently used. Within the same document, it's a good idea to not use many fonts, so recently used fonts are likely to be selected again. The second part of the menu has fonts belonging to the theme for this document. They contain fonts that we are likely to select because they belong to the theme, even though maybe we haven't yet used them in the document. And then there is a long alphabetical list of all the available fonts, well, including the ones that already appear at the top. We have to choose titles for menus. For a single menu, it has to be a simple descriptive title. For sub-menus in a hierarchy, we have to make sure that the menu item in the top-level menu matches the title for the sub-menu, so that when you move from one to the other, you have this context reference available. Phrasing of menu items is based on familiar and has to also use consistent terminology. All the items distinct from one another in meaning, and consistent and concise phrasing. Menu items should contain 1 or 2 words, but not whole sentences. Also, when there is an important keyword that characterizes what we want to do, it should be the first word in the menu item, even though in a normal English phrase it may not be the first word. If we want to open a file, we may want to say file : open, because you first want to see it's about a file and then see the action it applies to. The layout and the design of the menus can be restricted based on physical constraints like the window size. Here's a nice example. This is a menu from the photography site DP Review. It's a very long menu showing all the discussion forums. On a small screen, it takes 3 columns to present this menu. On a large screen, it can be presented in just 2 columns. And the website automatically changes its presentation depending on the size of your screen. We can have constraints in the character sets that are available. If a menu doesn't fit, we may want to use a smaller font. The system may, and for a good reason, not allow us to shrink the fonts indefinitely. There needs to be highlighting techniques to indicate, for instance, which menu item is currently about to be selected. And in some cases, we may also need instructions. A menu item can, for instance, be followed by a question mark icon so that you can get an explanation about the meaning of the menu item before you actually select it. Other layout and design aspects are the placement of the menus and of the menu items. All menu items should always be left aligned. Right, that's the nicest presentation, and you always start reading from that position. When you have inline submenus, like the accordion menu, where the selection of a menu item opens up the menu to make room for the submenu, then the inline submenu should be indented so that it's clear which items belong to the top-level menu, which items are from the submenu. We need to separate groups of items, and this can be simply done by blank lines. We don't need fancy graphics to do that. And when some items currently do not make sense, we should not remove them from the menu, because then the menu would become inconsistent depending on when you view it, but we should gray them out using a logical constraint. Everyone will understand the item is not available, but people are not looking for the item they cannot find. We can facilitate moving faster through menus than the simple mouse selection by offering keyboard shortcuts. Keyboard shortcuts are not only used to directly access the items to be executed, but can be used to also navigate through the menu. So the first letter, for instance, from a menu item can be used to automatically select its submenu. This supports expert use, it's faster to use it, but it can make translation to foreign languages difficult. What typically happens is that software like Microsoft Office is available in many languages, but the keyboard shortcuts are all based on abbreviations from the English term for the menu items. And these terms may not make sense in Dutch, and they may not start with the same letter as in English. In browsers, we may have automatically generated menus for the bookmarks we created. The bookmark menu, in fact, these items are shortcuts for instead of typing the whole address of the websites to go to. Finally, we know dialog boxes come in modal and non-modal form, like the non-modal dialog box in Office to insert symbols in a document. We can open up that dialog box and then put it on the side because we will use it often. We can, in some systems, do the same thing with menus. You have a pull-down menu, and you can actually drag it to the side and use it as if it was a non-modal dialog box. So you see there is overlap in interaction styles between different of these styles, menus, dialog boxes. We can have similar operations between them. Thank you for participating.